Adobe hasn't got a way to merge learning objects into learning objects, to manage, retrieve Flash XML external files, so they don't have a content management system. And that's where we are very active. So we are, 90% of our sales are by people who use Flash, and they want to have an infrastructure behind for reusing the Flashes and nesting them and tagging them and personalizing them and so on. But with the advent of the iPad, we had a boost on HTML5. Nobody knew what HTML5 was before this device came out, which doesn't have Flash. And that's, the trends that you see out there. And the other one, which is huge, is the iTunes. I mean, it's a restricted monopoly. They are doing money across any bits and pieces of the process. Now, Android is solving that. And again, if you really want, an interoperable, open, governmental digital marketplace, you should define standards, application profiles, bindings, so that anybody can play, not just Apple. So that's something that... and the other thing is reading versus rich media. And psychology, I think, is a key driver here. I mean, do you learn by reading or do you learn by engaging? Do you learn by gaming or do you learn by tutorials and so on? Again, I mean, at least commercially, they are now creating bridges across this. And this is a very nice joke. We'll go through it, but if you read it, why should you buy an iPad today? That's the answer. But the nice thing is that now we are overwhelming devices out there, and you go down to the 200 euros of an Acer tablet. So it really becomes a one tablet per student or per citizen paradigm, which is sustainable. So what have we done? This is first the commercial part. What we have done, we've put a gateway between our content management and repository. So the content management and repository is a 10 years development of 50 people. So it's a large infrastructure for content management and repository behind Moodle, Blackboard, or Saba, some total plateau that you might have in place as an LMS. What we've added is a gateway, so you're not needing to use our LCMS or our repository. You could use any third-party repository LCMS. You could use any third-party LMS, but what we do is alignment. So every user is profiled. You have his name, password, information, credentials. Also, if he's enrolled into communities in Facebook or if he's enrolled in classes in Moodle, the system, the gateway, has got an aggregation layer where you know exactly who's got rights to join which group and to access which content. And at that point, we've developed apps. So the apps that we have on the BlackBerry, the iPhone, the iPad, and the Androids are not detached from the existing LMSs or communities, but they are talking regularly and updating information with them. And it's a pluggable framework. So it's a SOA, and what you can do, you can add services. So the first services that we've done is adding tracking, the rendering of IMS content packaging, tracking, reporting, which is the basics that you would want. But since it's a pluggable interface, we are now adding location, streaming, collaboration, and social networking. And we've done it for all these devices. We have more or less decided to give up Windows Mobile, even if Windows 7 is a little bit better. But we are more or less investing on these devices. And we think the brightest future being on the Android side. And we have extended our backend. So this is our offering environments where we create the content. So the content can be now offered in HTML, even if it was mostly Flash in the past. You can drag and drop nest objects, so a teacher or a professor, but mostly a publisher, a professional developer can now produce content for any device. And it can classify it, so it can tag content for single source and multiple channels. So we can say this is a version for a web screen, this is a version for an iPhone. So we are using standard metadata and IMS VDEX vocabulary standards for vocabularies, and we are doing classification by skills. So once you've created an object, you can classify it by a taxonomy of skills, but also, for example, and then this is the LCMS, a classification by location. So we mesh up virtual Earth. You can go into Madrid, zoom into Prado, and say, this is Manhattan actually, and the MoMA, but you could go into Prado and say, this is a learning zone. As easy as drawing a rectangle, you drag and drop the learning object, and it gets geotagged. Now, geotag is not proprietary. Everybody can do this, but doing it the right way, meaning using long. So we're using long classification, which is the right way location. There's a long classification in the metadata for location. And we're using GPS, which is another standard. So at that point, any GPS-enabled device can talk to the server, which is a third-party RLCMS or repository or third-party server. The GPS says, I'm here at XYZ. This goes out, talks to our repository, harvests the metadata, the vocabularies, takes the right content, and gives it on demand. How you do it is dramatically different of what you are doing. Everybody will be doing this, but if you do it in a closed system, you can't break it apart. In this system, everything is tagged, so that's why. Then the user experience is an app, so you download it, you launch it. You can sign into any URL, so it could be our repository, but it could be Moodle, it could be Blackboard, it could be any third-party LMS. You can have content which is available and being downloaded or downloaded. You can have categories, so classification, categorization, taxonomies of content or classes of content. You can have status tracking, so it tracks SCORM in terms of the usage of the content, and you have location-based detection. So just showing you some screen dumps, I don't think we'll have time for a live demonstration, but I have the iPad here with me. This is something that we did for NATO, and we're using it a lot for technical industrial maintenance at this point. This is QTI assessment, so the other thing, the way we use standards is assessments. We run tests, and once you have a tracking footprint, in many mobile applications, this is just standalone. It doesn't talk to Moodle or to the LMS saying, look, that student which did a self-training experience at the Prado didn't know exactly what Guernica was or didn't do this and that, so that you can remediate in the classroom, maybe using digital boards and so on. It's lost. Our approach is actually interoperating and exchanging tracking information and downloading it. And then we have, as I said, location-based. Well, I'll go through this quite quickly. And then you can launch any application. The good thing is that you can launch videos, you can launch animations, you can launch tutorials by using the plugs inside the application, the device. And as I said, since the advent of Android, now the functionalities and the devices and the costs are decreasing, and you can use any of these devices for interworking. We have a couple of scenarios. If you want to see it, just tell me when I have 2 minutes so I can fast forward to the final screen. Okay, so this is the first scenario. These are market scenarios, so they are not research. These are real things that we are doing on the market. This is done with Ericsson, the world-leading infrastructure telecom operator with the foundation. They have villages in Africa where they give phones that they retire from Scandic countries. So they go into Scandinavia, they retire smartphones, which are now evolving to a new generation, and they give them for free in villages. They call them the Millennium Villages. And we did an experience in Rwanda because they wanted to put something in these phones, because otherwise they were, an empty cathedral, as we say. I don't know if it's a term that you use here, but you didn't have real things on top of it. So nothing better than just-in-time medical education. These ladies are out there, they give birth to newborn, and these kids, they don't know how to nurse them, how to give birth to them. So they decided to do learning pills. They had medical trainers which were using our offering tools, dragging and dropping and composing pills very fast, just in time. It wasn't needed for first aid, but think of aviary disease or mad cow disease. You would need to do that overnight. So dragging and dropping and composing fast is key on the back end. Then they stored the content on the Ericsson portal in Sweden using meta tags. So they used skills classification and location classification. And the ladies out there, over a 3G network, were just accessing the portal, putting name and surname, they were profiled, and the pill was sent if they were ladies and they were a candidate to get that content. They had it on their contents. The contents are, in that case, quite rote. This is SCORM content packaging with learning objects goes. And they had video, audio, text, images. They had to have a minimum set because they were old phones. Not iPads or Androids, but they also had quizzes and assessments, and all these were tracked using SCORM and sent back to the platform, so that I think they then used Moodle for giving additional courses based on the pills that they got back from the assessment. This is QTI rendered on a phone, tracked using SCORM. And the good thing is at the end, they also did data entry. So using SCORM, rather than just one way, they were putting in things like my name, my husband's name, the weight of the child. So they were putting data, which on the back channel, with the SCORM tracking, was sent back to the portal, and the portal could hand it over to an e-government setup. So thanks to interoperability and so on. So it was beyond learning. It was just the right time where these ladies were giving information. If you go to them tomorrow, that they don't have the problem, they will never tell you when the kid was born and who was the, unluckily, who was the husband. And that was a very key point, that if you do it just in time, it's not just one way. Think of sales training. So another scenario that we did with a leading operator was device selling. So they were selling devices, and the sales was quite different by location. Salesforce automation. And once they logged in, this was on an old BlackBerry, they had the BlackBerry version, and again they had some training courses. They could browse it by metadata. They could have content packaging. They could have pills about the use and functionality of the phone they were going to sell. And then when they were clicking on synchronization by using SCORM tracking, this was sent back to the corporate training platform. And this is market, and it's real technologies, scalable technology, real business cases, not research. And presumably you wouldn't get grants for doing that in a European Commission initiative. So that's why I wanted to show you real things first. What we are doing in the research labs, and being in a university maybe it's more interesting for you, is we are bridging multiple devices. So we are bridging digital boards with flash content, with mobile, with virtual worlds. So we're trying to give a continuum. Thanks to the fact that there's an infrastructure, which is your learning platform, the idea is that when you're on the field, you use your iPad. When you're in the classroom, you use your digital board. When you're at home, you use your web-based training. And if you like gaming, you use your virtual world. And again, you could do these as silos, closed proprietary implementation, but they wouldn't talk to each other. If you use always a standard infrastructure with SCORM, so if you put objects in a world, which is our SCORM objects, which are tracked and reported in a virtual world, you can track everything as you do it on a BlackBerry and so on. And that's where we did a couple of scenarios. So the first one is on technical maintenance. Again, we work in very large projects, and sometimes we bring scenarios across projects. So this scenario was first done in II, which was a very old project with the Finnish University of Helsinki. We then developed it extremely well in Wear It at Work, which is a large IP on wearable training. But we also did things in IRMOS, which is a location-based initiative, and Natasha, where we work with Thales and EADS for on-airplane delivery of training. What we usually do, we join consortia, even if they are not Intel or e-learning, and we say, okay, we would want to exploit the e-learning implementations of that. So Wear It at Work and Natasha were enterprise fundings, actually huge fundings, 24 million, 26 million, and similar was Natasha with tens of partners. What we did was the pilot about learning technologies. So in this case, what we did, we used again our infrastructure, but we accessed external repositories of S1000D and DITA content. Who knows what DITA is? DITA is a very promising standard which is coming out for learning materials, technical textbooks. So it comes from IBM. It's been gifted to OASIS, which is a standard body for information society, so a much bigger picture than just learning. And they are standardizing XML for textbooks. Not only organization and table of contents, but inside the page, the structures. If this succeeds, the dream of interoperating paragraphs across publishers is going to happen. But if you think of technical maintenance, that's already needed today. If I'm building a big plane, I can't just redo the manual every time. I need to drag and drop and recompose a manual because I'm selling it different to the Ministry of Defense in Spain versus to that in France. So what we're doing here, we're accessing repositories of DITA and S1000D, which is a military standard, and SVG, which is a vectorized standard, and VRML and XRD, which is a VRML, it's a virtual world standard. And we're getting all these contents. They're all XML. We are interpreting and parsing them, and we are aggregating and reusing these contents. We are creating manuals, which are interactive manuals, and we are geolocating them on the airplane. So we had an airplane layout with Wi-Fi hotspots, and just by triangulating the Hi-Fi signal, you can say you are in the cockpit, you are in the wing, you are in the engine room of the airplane. We drag and drop the manuals. Using satellite technology, we load it on the A380, which is the new Airbus airplane. Actually, we did it while they were building it. So between Hamburg and Toulouse, we did it on the, in the hangars, in the virtuals, not in the real airplane, but on the cockpits. And then you could go around the plane and just move yourself and get the content with any device which was available. In those days, we were experiencing in iTutor eye gaze control. So we worked with Nottingham Psychology, I think, University. They were actually studying the gaze of the eye, which is a common practice, I think, in psychoattitudinal testing and so on. And we applied it to learning. So we were understanding where the maintainer was looking, and we were giving him information on demand. And he was using a wearable jacket done by EADS with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi connection. And we're talking about 2006 here, so it was early days. And this guy was going around and location-based detection. Then we also did a Palm-based solution where we did the same thing by gazing and using point-and-click devices. But if you go, on Google and you write exact learning or exact iTutor or Junti Labs, you would find this video. So do we have audio? I hope it's hooked up. If it's hooked up, this is the video. I just run it fast. It won the Best in Excellence Award by Brandon Hall in 2005. And for that reason, the wearable solution is quite clumsy. You wouldn't be as clumsy as that today. You would just have your goggles with Bluetooth connection right side. And we use our content management system, which is the same that we use for Moodle and for anything in simple.
A gaze and voice-assisted industrial electronic performance. iTutor is a multimodal wearable platform for maintenance management and training. iTutor integrates leading wearable devices with an advanced gaze and voice-controlled web-based application. The tool deals with the increasing informational gaps in contemporary industrial sectors and is designed and evaluated in the Comau service.
We engaged the Fiat Group with Comau, which is the largest automotive plant builder in the world.
A large volume of information that varies quickly over time characterizes maintenance and plant operation applications. But due to operational changes and upgrades, half of these pages are obsolete every 6 months. To avoid the risk of performing a procedure with obsolete information, maintenance facilities usually maintain a centralized database, allowing personnel to search for relevant manual sections on demand. Let's follow Roberto. He is a novice maintainer who is still only partially trained. While operating the machine, he suddenly needs to consult a procedure from the manual.
So what you're seeing here is talking to the system, voice recognition. This is an SVG small, very small screen. So this is vectorized, and it's just an app, which is our player of SCORM for that sort of device. Obviously on the iPad it's completely different, but there's no change. I mean, all the XML stream is the same. So if it comes to an iPad, you have a nice flashy interface which reads IMS content packaging, does SCORM tracking and everything on deck. Here it uses SVG, voice recognition, language localization, and maps. So rather than having a table of content, the XML of IMS, which is a table of content, is rendered with blocks of the plant.
His iTutor,
this is IMS.
he starts browsing the plant structure in the visual interface. selecting
zooms in
different
by
items
looking
with
at
his
the blocks of the
gaze,
structure.
and giving simple voice
And
commands.
when he asks for content, manuals, or courses, the system gives him on demand
During this operation,
for that
he
specific
can keep
point
his hands on the
training
job and
videos
at the same time
or
access the
computer-aided
company's
design.
integrated software.
And it comes from
and
our
digital
LCMS, but also from
information.
SAP
In a very short
and
number of steps, he has reached the
AutoCAD
information
and
he
third-party
needs,
systems, all
cutting the
interoperating on
existing
behind the
distance between
scene.
his work and the information resources. A few minutes later, while troubleshooting, he consults an
So in this
electrical
scenario,
scheme.
he's not only calling a
The
computer-aided
scheme can
design,
be easily
but
managed,
where he looks,
exploiting the
system
tracked focus
plans,
of
zooms
interest,
and
coupled with
focuses
voice commands.
on hotspots. And it also
Having
gets
found the faulty
feedback
piece,
from the
he
field.
can
So
use
once he's done the
iTutor to
maintenance,
verify its presence in the
he
plant
reports
warehouse.
performances and information, and this goes back to
Before
SAP.
concluding the operation,
So it's our
he
learning
leaves a
management
message
system,
in order to record
talking
what has
with
been done.
SAP, talking with a platform like Moodle for getting, its track records, and interoperating
iTutor brings the right
on an app.
information when and where it is really needed, merging the user's information space with their workspace.
So that's a typical technical implementation. We have got another very big scenario that we have developed in sculpture, where we were the leading of a virtual worlds setup. Virtual worlds is a very good case study. I mean, when we developed it, we did it on Windows Java virtual machine, on Deep Matrix open community, virtual world community, and using VRML. All these free technologies have gone either bankrupt or out of the market. We then went into Wonderland, wonderful Sun environment, and Wonderland was and Sun was acquired by Oracle, and Wonderland now is out. So if you're too early, you just need to keep these things rolling. But if you did it the right way, XML, standards, interoperability, we can just move to the next big thing. As far as it's well done, and those who do the next big thing do it the right way. The problem is when somebody comes and says it's proprietary and you don't need to look into it. But like more and more, this is changing. So now we also hooked up repositories and libraries from museums, from libraries. That's another huge world. Of an open archive interface, you could query repositories coming from museums and from libraries. And we use location-based and mobile learning solutions. What we used here is query by metadata, so you could harvest the Prado by saying, give me something which has got a cow and is abstract and it talks about war, and it will, it's not a cow, it's a toro, how do you say, it's a bull, and it will give you Guernica. Okay, so that's not research. But what you could do is query by sample. You could give him a sketch or something, it gives Fourier transformation, it extracts the features, it goes into the repository, which has been indexed the same way, and gives you by example. So what we did here with the Louvre, the National Gallery, and the Uffizi Gallery, which were all part of our consortium, we added algorithms from, I think it was Sheffield or Staffordshire University, which was feature extraction, just layered on top because everything was already there. We just needed to add the intelligence about the feature extraction. And they were finding 3D models and 2D pictures by examples. At that point, the teacher was doing this. He just give me something similar to this Ming vase because I want to do something about China. Then we had a plugin to create virtual worlds inside our offering environment. It's not a product yet because, as I told you, the technology just went out of the market and the market for virtual worlds didn't go as we expected. But we also have plugins for visual boards, for location-based, for mobile. So depending on where the market goes, we develop them. But we have all these in the research parts, and we had Hive repository behind for the storage of all this. At that point, we created worlds. So there was a virtual world assembly by the teacher. It was using deep matrix first, and then the Sun Wonderland technology for synchronization of avatars. And he created a world. And this world was resident on Hive, and all these were links from Hive, live links. So if you change the painting and create a new virtual exhibit, it's a new virtual exhibit. And this is a playground score, and it's launched by a URL from Moodle or Sakai or Blackboard. So Moodle, Sakai, or Blackboard doesn't know what it's launching. It's giving it, the teacher is getting it from the repository and saying, you should play this experience. We've got the rendering engine, the tracking engine, and then we give back to Moodle saying, look, this guy didn't pass that experience, whatever it was. So that's where the unbundling of the content on the back end is very powerful. That's the back end, and on the front end, this is what the student sees. So he can use any of these devices and contents. He logs in by using, presumably, a mobile device. In those days, you were using Windows Mobile. And he can download the objects which a teacher has assigned to him on Moodle. So on Moodle, you assign, and since the gateway understands that, when you're logging in, you're not logging into Moodle, but you're logging into Gateway, it downloads the assignments that you have done to that authenticated user. You download it, you play with it, so you can synchronize everything you've done with the infrastructure once you've done it. You can also have quizzes, QTI assessments, and so on. These are just some point and click about the experience that you might have on the mobile. And at that point, you can have a quiz. And at that point, you can also have video, you can also have geolocation. So the system can follow you, and the teacher can set up some game-based playing depending on where you are in the town or in the visit. And when they go back into the room, you can remediate. So it's not starting another experience, but the same learning objects and the same materials can be projected on a Promethean smartboard or on a smartboard, digital smartboard, and you can use and reuse the content, or you can create virtual worlds where the same assets, rather than displayed on a screen or used on a board, are hooked up in a virtual world. But it's the same learning objects streamed on different setups and environments. And this has been done and demonstrable, and we're now putting marketplaces in front of it in the research side. So, closing, because I think it's too long. Are you ready for all of this? So the big message was the Sputnik has been launched. So be aware that people are doing this. They're doing it proprietary, end-to-end. And if we don't act in standardization so that we can do at least bits and pieces of it, maybe just put the pedagogy on top of it, which is presumably your business, things will be done in a siloed, separate way. And the second thing is that somebody might come in and do the innovation before you, and things are moving very fast. This is a nice paradox from Mr. Poole, which is another media analyst, which did a parallel between 24 hours clock and the evolution of media and the innovation in media. So if we think that the world is evolving, the history of mankind is on 24 hours, at 9:30 p.m., men started to use oral communication. So it's late at day, so only at 9:30 p.m. in 24 hours he started to use voice to teach and train and communicate. At 8 minutes to midnight, the book was invented, and we still have books, very largely used, physical books in our education. At 11 seconds to midnight, video and analog media were invented. And we're still not using them. I mean, we're just jumping that phase. I mean, it was just 11 seconds to midnight. We didn't use video at that extent, only in some cases for education. Satellite has been used, video training has been used, but not at the extent that it could have been. While we are talking, the next big thing is happening. So personal media, ubiquitous broadband, mobile access is here, and at the stroke of midnight on a 24-hour clock, the revolution is happening. Now, the thing is that revolutions are always understood after they have happened. And there's a nice anecdote, which I don't know if it's true, but we call the Gutenberg Innovation Syndrome, that seems that when Gutenberg was talking about the new invention to a restricted audience like this one, everybody said, yes, nice, but how can I use it? I mean, I'm a nice handwriter, and my job will be there for always. And how can we use it apart printing the Bible? And this is a video on YouTube. I don't know if you ever saw it. If you Google the book Invention on internet, you find two important very short videos which are jokes. This is a monk monastery in the Gutenberg period.
Ansgar? Ja, der er jeg. Ja, så bra, ok.
Which is receiving the new innovation.
Ja,
The iPad
ja, hva gjør du?
stage.
Ja, det er det her. Ja, vil du sitte? Takk. Ja. Jaha. Ja, så jeg har ikke fått gjort noen ting hele formiddagen. Nei, jeg beklager at det tar tid. Altså, skjønner vi holder på å legge om til et helt nytt system, og da skal alle ha hjelp på en gang. Ja. Så du kommer ikke inn i den, eller? Nei, men ligger der. Ok, har du forsøkt å åpne den?
Ja, åpne den, altså hvis det hadde vært så enkelt, så hadde jeg jo ikke tilkalt helpdesk, hadde jeg vel?
Nei.
Du har lyst på en sånn?
Nei, da, det skal være fort gjort, det skal vi se. Du bare gjør der. Sånn. Ja, da er vi i gang.
Ja, altså så langt kom jeg også.
Ok.
Men så stoppet det opp, og så var jeg redd for at noe av teksten skulle forsvinne, så jeg turte ikke å gå videre.
Ja, ok. Nei, men du skjønner, inni her, så ligger det kanskje flere hundre sider med lagret tekst. Så for å komme videre, så tar du tak i et ark på en måte her, og så liksom blar du over på neste side sånn. Da fortsetter teksten der.
Jeg blar, altså.
Du blar, ja.
Men når jeg skal tilbake, da?
Ja, da bare blar du tilbake igjen. Tar tak der, og så sånn. Der, så er du tilbake til den teksten du hadde sa. Ikke noe...
Ok, så den slutter der, og så fortsetter den der, ja. Ok, men når jeg skal avslutte dagen, hva gjør jeg da?
Da bare slår du sammen permene. Ja, på den måten der.
And it goes on for ages. And then you have this one, which maybe, I think you know, who knows this one? Okay, so I just started off for those who didn't see it, and you can go on internet and Google.
Hola, presentamos el nuevo dispositivo de conocimiento bioóptico organizado, de nombre comercial BOOK. BOOK es una revolucionaria ruptura tecnológica, sin cables, sin circuitos eléctricos, sin batería, sin necesidad de conexión. Compacto y portátil, BOOK puede ser utilizado en cualquier lugar. Al carecer de batería eléctrica, no necesita recargarse, pudiendo ser utilizado tanto tiempo como sea necesario, aunque no se tenga disponible una toma de corriente. BOOK nunca se cuelga. BOOK nunca necesita ser reiniciado. Simplemente tienes que abrirlo y comenzar a disfrutar de sus enormes ventajas.
And it goes on, so you should look at that. Since it's in Spanish, I thought it was good to see it. So the main message here is that every revolution is very, very difficult to understand when it's happening. And you always think, you know, it will be for my kids or nephews and I will not be affected. In internet times, I think this is not adequate. And especially with the advent of the iPad, with all its limitations, but also all its potentials, I think that the Sputnik has been launched and you should be ready to face it and bridge your missile gap as soon as possible before it's too late. Okay, so thanks, I'm around. I can show you the applications on the iPad if you're really interested in the real thing, and we're looking for partners both for the tail call, which is research, and for a market in Spain where we don't have yet a solid partnership. So I'm more than happy to talk about these topics if you are interested in the coffee. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you very much for this very inspiring talk. We are very late, but maybe we can take one or two questions from the audience. Please, I'm sure there are any questions. Jesus, you have the mic, please.
In this world where you have people, in this world where you are, I've been talking about people setting up their own learning environment and composing things from many places and so on. Which one is the role of the educator? I mean, should you be somebody very interested in technology, trying to produce materials up to the latest technology? Should you be concentrating on, you know, the learning experience for the student, or what?
Obviously, there is every place where you need tutorship, peer review, support, which is a traditional model. This is not automated by the technology, and there is a space in the virtual world for the real teacher as before, and more or less that is the role that he has today in e-learning. If I was a pedagogic professional, I would also look at what I call the last mile. I mean, everything here can be standardized, interoperable, reusable, but the last mile of intelligence where you personalize content. So you go out there, semantic-rich world, you take the assets and you sequence, you package a learning, you create a learning experience. That's where the algorithm is very valuable. Somebody wants to invent it, and pedagogy is the foundation. So consultancy on that pedagogy, automating some of the reasoning of that pedagogy are all to be demonstrated. I mean, e-learning today is very, very rote. Learning design has been an attempt from the standardization bodies to explicitly write the logics of pedagogy. Who knows learning design? So it's still a niche, a research niche, because it's quite complex. It's multi-role players, and it's got a parallel with theatrical pieces. So you can say, this is an actor, this is the piece, the scene. One plays the teacher, the other plays the student. These sequence of activities happen. Now, it's a very powerful XML language for markup of learning experiences, but the examples I've personally seen are very rote, because it's tough work to be a pedagogist and knowing how to express it in XML. I wanted to consult, I am consulting the Commission to do an e-content plus like call where pedagogists work with publishers, work with education, with technology providers to do a collection of learning design, real content to demonstrate the value of learning design. And I think that's a huge need of pedagogy there, because the people I'm talking to doesn't know how to express logically the pedagogy. Now, you say, well, it's in the teacher. Obviously, if I'm in a room, I'm with my kids, I'm naturally a good teacher. But that is not enough today. I mean, you should explicit what it means to be a good pedagogy. And if you go back to your studies, you know, there's a lot of constructive and associative theory about the logics of education, and that should be expressible in XML. So I think that if I was a pedagogy, I would learn XML, I would learn learning design, and I would learn how to explicit the good way of teaching, which is inside me, but that is not enough. I mean, it needs to be explicitly expressed, at least in research initiatives. And I'm not a pedagogist, so I wouldn't maybe be the best one to tell.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we should stop here. We're very late.